hope you all will tune in. This is a plug for Sunday for our health study, our health study that I'll be working on with Brian on that too. What we'd like to do, because there's so many of us, and that we'd like to just people, if you would, to introduce yourself on the chat, and we can meet you that way instead of taking a lot of time for each person to introduce themselves. We hope to limit this to 1 hour. We are getting pretty good at Zoom calls, and I know that probably attention span wise, an hour probably will do it as well for everybody. So that's our goal. I want you to introduce my dear buddy here, Bridget, who is my co-vice president on this committee, who is very wise and takes good care of me. So we're going to get started. Yes, it's
a big job, but somebody has to do it.
Somebody has to keep me in line. We do want to. I don't know if Brian is on the call yet. We do want to just recognize Brian Pulesso for being the chair and doing such a great job for so many years, and also Elizabeth Greaser, who is the operations manager for the league, and thank you for setting this all up. We really appreciate it. Again, we would like to keep it to an hour. Elizabeth will be muting, and then when people talk, I'm going to try to recognize people. We'll get you unmuted because we want everybody to really have a chance to use this as a brainstorming session, and we can get some ideas where we want to go, and then we'll take it from here. One thing I want to remind you is about the league, that just a reminder that the league is strictly nonpartisan. We neither support nor oppose candidates for any office. And at the same time, we are wholeheartedly political and work to influence policy through advocacy. That's where we come in. We are the original grassroots citizen network directed by the consensus of our members. And a reminder that we're local, state, and national. So I just wanted to share, I had my first board meeting with the board back in June. And from the board, there were 3 priorities that were identified. And those priorities included diversity and inclusion, racial justice and equity, and then voter outreach and community engagement. So those were keep those in mind. And then let's talk a little bit, just a reminder, probably all of you except me were on this call or was on this committee before. But just wanted to remind you that for this committee, it's the Education and the Advocacy Committee, that we are responsible for advocating on the local level on issues of importance to our members, and any advocating done by the committee must be in agreement with the local, state, and national positions. And the committee is responsible for development and for the implementation of general membership meetings and public forums and other educational events that's held by the League of Women Voters of the Metropolitan Columbus. So with that being said, at the board meeting, the board really directed one of the priorities of the racial justice and equity to be toward our committee, to be directed toward our committee. And so we were asked to come up with ways to fit these priorities into our work. So what Bridget and I and Elizabeth, we've talked, and what we thought we'd like to do for the next hour is to brainstorm and come up with how we would like to fit these priorities into the work that this committee will be doing. We also thought that then, normally I believe the committee meets about every 3 months. We thought what we would do is then meet next month after we've got all of your ideas and figure out how we want to move forward with that. We'll do that and set the direction of the committee. So with that being said, I look forward to hearing what you all have to say, and I'm going to, and again, I apologize. I was trying to use my computer. We had a lot of background problems. So as people raise their hand, I'm just going to scroll at the bottom. I'm on my iPad, so you're all on the bottom of my screen to see who would like to share. And I'm hoping that if I don't see you, that Elizabeth can see you all and she can get you released and we can start talking. So with that being, one other thing I will just say to you, that I will tell you that, you know, a lot of the stuff with the racism has come forward since the George Floyd, but many people in Franklin County and Columbus have been looking at racial issues prior to that. It was identified as an issue with the our commissioners, with our Board of Health, and then also then with George Floyd incident, there was a statement that did come out nationally from the League of Women Voters as well as the state level as well. So this is an issue that's been driven by our citizens as well as by the League and by our board. So with that being said, I will open it up and if you have any thoughts on and how you would like to proceed with this, we'd love to hear them.
Thoughts.
Okay. Oh, practice raising hands. Okay. And like I said, I can't see very well on here. So are you raising your hand? Okay. Yes. Jackie.
Oh, I was practicing, but I do have an idea. During the national convention, which some of us were fortunate enough to attend a couple weeks ago, there was a very great presentation on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they talked about the Junior League and the YWCA having these 21-day racial equity and inclusion challenges. So I looked online and found those. Also found like the American Bar Association had that. They all had this 21-day, and I think that ties into the idea that something internalizes in that time period, 21 days. But each one was a little different. But like on day one, you would read a certain article. On day two, you would maybe take a survey to see if you had any, you know, intrinsic biases. I'm using the wrong word there, but inherent biases. And so for 21 days, there would be articles, and some were poems, activities, and some started on Juneteenth, some were from last spring. I don't know that if we did that, we would have to do our own. We could probably borrow from some of these. I don't know if they're in the domain or if we would just contact those groups, see if we could use some of theirs. But it just seemed like a good idea to sort of kick this off, to involve all the members to say, you know, we invite you to do this 21-day challenge with us.
So would we be able to view that presentation?
I think, Elizabeth, I think they're all available now, aren't they? That one, it was probably a good one for the membership committee too, Lucy. It was on fostering diversity, inclusion, and belonging in the League. But they did mention this 21-day challenge, which seemed like would also be good for the education committee to use.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, Bridget.
We're going to send out notes from this meeting, and we can send out a link to that convention session that anyone can watch. We can also, before we get back to everybody, find out if we can go ahead and send a link to the 21-day challenge. Okay. So that anybody that wants to do it could actually get it done before our next meeting, maybe.
Okay, I just sent that a link to one. It was one of the YWCA ones to you and Sally, Bridget. So.
Okay, thanks, Jackie.
Great. Anybody? I think Janice. Hi.
Yeah, but you were saying that maybe this would be sent out to all the League members, not just this committee, correct?
Well, eventually, maybe after, you know, it was made personal, maybe to our association.
Okay. That sounds like a great idea.
Great. Anybody else? Again, yeah. Oh, Carla, hi. We'll get you unmuted. Carla Hicks, Elizabeth.
I cannot unmute her. She has to unmute herself somehow.
Okay.
Oh, I think she got it. Yep.
Yeah. Hi. I'm new to the League as well as this committee, so I was just wondering how the committee work gets actualized before I can really like weigh in. And then my second question is, in terms of racial justice and equity, you know, how if the League has done similar work, or where everybody is or might be at this point?
Well, I will begin to say that this was my understanding, and I'm going to have my team get it back so I can see their picture. Was a new priority that was set this year. They did have the diversity and inclusion as a priority last year. My other understanding, and again, I'm going to correct me if I'm wrong, is we can pretty much develop this as we see fit. I do believe within the the restraint, to follow the rules within the league. I think we're open, Carla. I think that's what makes it so much fun, that we have that ability.
Because I do think it's important that people have a foundational understanding of racial justice as well as equity in terms of what's really being discussed there, and what those terms mean, and all of that baseline foundation.
Absolutely. And I think everyone would agree with that. Anyone else want to comment? I'm having a hard time. If you guys see a hand. Am I missing anybody?
Nancy, raise your hand.
Yeah. Nancy Ritchie.
Oh, hi, Nancy. Sorry.
I'm new to this group too. Am I muted? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh.
Who is speaking, please?
Okay. So I'm fairly new to this group as well. And Carla, I agree with what you said. Is there something that we should be doing before, that kind of understanding of what we're talking about? Do you have some ideas about that? Because I think so many people are starting at different places that many of us feel like we're not really sure what we're talking about. We'd like to be more informed.
I think that's great. And Bridget and I had talked about this. And one thing that we have both done is that, and we can send this out, but we've been working on this, and I had it at the bottom even, but the Columbus Metropolitan Club has done a whole series. And Carla, I actually saw you at the one a couple of weeks ago, or last week, doing it on racism and racial issues. And I think it's really, really good because it involves Central Ohio. Yeah. And that's where we're focusing. The other thing that I would recommend, that we're trying to get some tapes on, I've listened to a couple of great ones that were put out by the Ohio Public Health Association in June, and they're not available. I heard them live, and they're not available, but they were outstanding once those are available. But the other place that I found has some great things was even the Health Policy Institute of Ohio, HPO, if you're familiar with them, and their statement on racism and health. Now, Carla, you might have some other great ideas, because I have the privilege of knowing a little bit of your background to help us. And that's one thing we might look at, what we can do to educate everyone and get them on the same team. Because honestly, Bridget and I had talked about that, and we felt that the same as well.
Sure. One easy one is Kamara Jones has her, the Gardener's Tale, that talks about the 3 levels of racism, and just kind of helps you visualize, because she tells it through a gardener's view, and how, I won't go into it, but that's always a good one, and that's been historically used.
Okay. So maybe what we could do in the meantime too this month is come up with any good resources. I know, and I'll be really honest with you, I'm on so many different Zooms that someone has sent out some great books on racism, and I'm not sure if it's this group or was my Jackie, Lucy, Bridget group. I don't know, but I think that's a great idea. What would you all say that would be worthwhile, that we would all look for good resources in the next month that we could use as education for our league?
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. And I'll just say, if you find something that you want to recommend, if you can send that to me, and I'm going to put my email down there, I'll kind of compile everything into a document. And we, we worked also, this is just another resource, we worked with the Quran Institute a number of times at OSU, and they have a lot of really great resources on their website. So yeah, if you think of an idea, a book, a website, whatever you think of, just forward it to me and I'll start collecting them.
Does that sound okay to everyone in terms of developing resources? Okay, great. Okay, what are your other thoughts? I'm scanning through here. And Nancy and Carla, this is my first meeting too, so I'm glad you're here. I should ask, is anyone else, is this your first meeting for this committee? Oh, Lucy, yeah, I can see Lucy. I'm kind of going through. Anyone else? I see Diane, excellent. I see Rachel. I see Sarah. I see Caitlin. I see, I'm waiting for it. If I've missed anyone, I apologize. It's a little hard on my iPad to go through, but I'm really glad and we really welcome you. I just see this as a very timely, oh, Ellen, thank you, Ellen. Her first time as well. So what are some of your other thoughts? And I'm going to rely some on some people who've been on the committee before. If you have some thoughts on how you'd like to see us continue, or if there's some other things you saw from the committee that you're working on, you want to continue as well.
I guess I'll just give some people a little bit of context maybe about this committee and just the league structure in general, since we have so many new members on this call. But I am the part-time staff person, and then we have 350 members, and they're all volunteers. So, as was suggested before, like this committee can be whatever you want it to be. And when I first started, the Education Advocacy Committee looked quite a bit different. They put on a different educational forum every month, an in-person meeting about just a variety of different topics that were pertinent to Columbus. And then we kind of had more of a lull, and now we're starting the committee back up again under a specific priority that the board set. So, we can go with, kind of trying to tie racial justice and equity to our voter service work, but we don't have to tie everything into voter service work. We can look into partnering with other organizations that already have programs established, helping them reach their goals. So we don't always have to tie everything into voter registration. We can be a little bit broader in this particular committee. So I hope that was helpful for some new.
Great. So I don't see many hands up. What we had talked about, Bridget and I, and again, we were just brainstorming on our own, but the one thing we had talked about that came up already was educating our league members, because we really felt that was important. And that was a great way to get everybody on the same page. And then the other thing we had talked about was to look at joining other existing efforts in the community that are already combating racism and to form partnerships. So we have a list of some organizations, and again, I know the Current Institute was on. We just last week had a great call with OSU Medical Center, who is doing a lot in terms of, they have a great anti-racial plan that they have put into place and things going on. And then they're interested in registering their patients that are coming in as outpatients or inpatients, as well as census collecting. So that was someone we reached out to. So that was our other thing. We were hoping that as you thought about what you might be doing, is who are some things out there? Yes, Nancy.
The YWCA, which
Yes.
is a natural partner, and Christy Angel is the director, and they have had eliminating racism as part of their mission statement forever. And I can't imagine a better partner than them right now.
And Nancy, you sound like you know her.
Yes, I do.
And it sounds like you might be our contact to set that up.
I just think she'd be so open to it. And, it's a women's group too, which I love because they take charge. And, but it has been part of the mission. They've had the Women of Achievement, and that's always part of the core value of people who get that award. So it's been consistent for them. And I also think of the people they serve, which is a lot of women who I know from the downtown Y, a lot of women who are transitioning into from sometimes difficult situations, homelessness, abusive situations, whatever. And part of what they do is try to make them fully capable of living a life. And what better way to do that than being a citizen that's engaged and part of making decisions and all of that. So I think that would be an ideal partnership.
Excellent. So anybody else? Sarah, do I see you raising your hand or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hall Phillips. This is my first meeting, so I'm a new person to the League of Women Voters. And so this is sort of a follow-up on what Elizabeth was saying, that all the things that we're doing don't necessarily have to connect directly to voter outreach, voter engagement. But one of the questions I had is whether or not the League has done any voter registration at any of the protests, because obviously there's a lot of people there, and these are people who are very engaged and concerned in issues of racism and social justice. And I wondered if that was something that we could do, or that we could do in partnership with the Voter Outreach Committee.
So the answer is yes. We have had people at least some of the protests registering voters. We've gotten probably about 300 voter registrations from the protests. Because of the COVID situation and it being so different this year, normally I would be advertising this, and we'd have like a table or like really trying to recruit more people to go out and register voters. So the approach this year has been, if you feel comfortable and are interested in in-person registration, or if you're going to be at the protest anyway and you want materials or training on how to register voters, I'm super happy to supply all of that. And then I've been having people drop the completed forms back off at my house, and I go through the forms, and if there's any errors or problems with the forms, then I contact the voter and have them fill it out again, or just kind of help them through the process. So that's what we've been doing so far. So I put my email in here earlier. If you are interested, you're planning to be at any of the protests, please contact me, because I have a few volunteers that have been going down and doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Did I see Nancy raising her hand
Yeah.
again? And if I'm missing anybody, just let me, Nancy, before you talk, just let me know. It's very difficult. I'm just scrolling at the bottom. So I do not want to miss anybody. So just raise your hand, and Elizabeth, if you see them, please. Okay, go for it.
So I did see on TV one night that there were people registering voters, and they looked young, and they looked like members of Black Lives Matter, and they were very enthusiastic. So it seems like there are folks out there wanting to register voters. So even if our members, if we don't have enough volunteers, it seems like there are people out there that training or materials or that kind of thing could be certainly supplied to the folks who are on the front lines doing that. And in some cases, having younger people. Well, we do have some young people here. I count myself in the old people group, and there are about 5 or 6 of you. But I think that could be very, and people of color out there actually doing the engagement would be fabulous to be partnering with some of those efforts.
Yeah, and I will let people know that from the Voter Service Committee standpoint, we are doing like a two-prong approach. One is direct voter service, like usual. The second is an indirect voter service, in which we're working with other nonprofit organizations that have direct services and clients and training them and doing the registration outreach that way, as well as just providing training for community members who want to, and materials for people that want to go out, you know, and do that in person. And then some other, and we have a training tomorrow night actually on voter registration in case anyone is interested. So,
Bridget.
And just to piggyback on what Elizabeth said, our trainings are open to anyone. You don't have to be a league member. So if you know somebody interested in registering, even if they're not a league member, or an organization that wants to get active. We are a little hampered this year because of the COVID and the age of so many of us. So, you know, we're looking to reach out. We've always had a very great voter registration effort, but it's a little hampered this year. The other thing I wanted to note, and I think the comment about the YW is such a good example. The one thing Sally and I, when we brainstormed this with Elizabeth, is we don't want to reinvent what's already happening. You know, that's why we thought we would look at what groups are in the community and what they're doing and see if we can become a part of what they're doing. Or conversely, if we find there's a gap, nobody's doing something we think needs done, then maybe we could start a new effort. But this being a really difficult year and a really busy year in terms of a presidential election coming up and a big push to get voters registered, we'll be, you know, we'll have lots of hats on between now and November, lots of us. So we had thought if we could insert ourselves into some of the other ongoing efforts. And there was a good, if you listen to the National Convention session that Jackie had mentioned, and we'll send out a link to it, there was a good comment and a good discussion of what they call allyship. And it's not just, you know, being aware of what another organization is doing, but actually becoming a partner and working with them, you know, along with your, you know, whatever your focus is, ours being, of course, voting ultimately. And it was a real good explanation of how you become more than just, you know, we partner with, you know, nothing behind it, some actual activity, or how you can really become an ally of these other organizations. And I think that's, you might want to look at that before we come back next month and really put some, you know, pen to paper and make some action items.
Thank you. So let's hear from some other. Let's see. Has anybody got their head? Carla, did I hear?
Yeah.
Yes.
First, I wanted to make sure that I was clear on what was just said. So for example, your voter registration training tomorrow, it's not just limited to members of the league. Is that true? Is that what I heard?
Yes. Actually, most of the people that have signed up for it are not members of the league.
Okay. And then I just wanted to also throw out Ohio Public Health Association as someone who would be willing to assist with the work of the league. And then
on my email, Carla, that's what I was talking about. That was the email I was sending out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then also, in going back to what we were talking about in terms of racial justice and equity, I mean, I think an important part would be, I mean, you're talking about 350 members. If they could even get to a point of being, you know, because being not racist is enough. You have to be anti-racist for the work to proceed. So if that could even, you know, if we could move that way with 350 people, and then they have their tentacles all, you know, in their scope, I mean, I think that would be a great opportunity.
Sounds great. So what do some of the others of you have to say? Somebody, I see, yeah, Rachel.
I guess this was more of a question. I'm also brand new, so I'm really just trying to listen. Thinking about issues of equity, I know that there are a lot of people that on polling days, they can't get to the polls for whatever reason because they have to work, because they don't have registration. Are we doing anything to help push voters to like apply for that mail-in absentee ballot or anything we can do to help people vote by mail, which levels the playing field a little bit and can also help people be healthy and safer, because I mean we've seen in other states how they're shutting polling places down, and you've got one polling site for hundreds of thousands of people, which obviously that's a huge equity issue. So I was wondering, is there anything we can do towards that and helping promote that mail-in balloting?
Elizabeth, you want to hit that one?
Yes, that's one of our main pushes this year, is getting people to apply for absentee ballots right now. So we have been, first of all, I want to say I'm open to any ideas people have, because how we do our work is usually people are like, oh, have you thought of this? And I'm like, no, let's do that. So we've been putting stuffers in food bags at food pantries, absentee ballot requests now, with information on the backside about how to register to vote, how to send in their absentee ballot. The problem is we can't include a stamp with that because we're not legally not allowed to. We are going to be doing phone banks pretty soon on several different topics, and one of the topics is going to be calling low propensity voters and helping them fill out absentee ballot applications. Whenever we do voter registration, we're also trying to give people an absentee ballot request at the same time. But I know there's more that can be done, so I'm open to ideas.
Another question, and then you mentioned like it's not legal to put stamps on, and I wondered, I'm a teacher, and I think about all of the things we're doing much more in terms of like virtual back to school nights, but there are a lot of times when parents have to come pick things up or we send things home. Can we partner with schools and send home here's how to register to vote, here's how to get a mail-in ballot? I mean, we had trouble getting our mail-in ballots earlier this year because our printer was broken and you had to print out a form to send it in. It said you could write it on a piece of paper, and I tried that and it was rejected. They didn't like it on the piece of paper. It had to be on a form. And fortunately, a candidate sent us a form. Everybody got one. It was just part of her mailer, but it was in a form. So I filled that out and then we got one. So I think in some cases, even access like that is hard. Can we partner with schools, which have so many people that are associated with them, to just give them here's how you could request one?
Yeah, I think that is a great idea. The Secretary of State is going to mail every registered voter an absentee ballot request form after Labor Day, but we're trying to like double up because there's lots of communities that it might get thrown away, it might not reach them, So like, I don't know what school you work with, but or that you work for, but we usually need like an insider to get us the okay to send in that type of form, but we're certainly would be interested in doing that. We'd have some ties to Columbus public schools. So I will look into that and see if we can finagle our way to getting rid of those.
That's about the program, about the students. We have a great student program, but it doesn't include adults, right?
No, it's in school. So we talk about them talking to their parents, but it's not like their parents aren't there at the program. So,
anybody
Ben?
else?
Ben, did you have something?
Yeah, me, hi. I have a few thoughts. I kind of want to reinforce how seriously I've been thinking about the current topic regarding turnout and availability and how it intersects with equity in terms of how things are going to be on the second. So briefly, it's not about me. I'm a longtime poll worker. I guess I would qualify as a younger poll worker, given the individuals that normally do volunteer for elections. But me personally, given how I've lived my life the last 4 months, I have grave reservations about working the upcoming election. And I think it's sort of incumbent on us to maybe artfully walk this line of how we can talk about this, because I really, really, really do believe every major county in Ohio, especially if we don't see the curve bend in the next few months, and by all stretches of the imagination, fall is going to be worse than now, and now is not good. I personally, can see the major counties throughout Ohio, 7 of which are now mask mandatory at the state level, closing down a lot of locations. There were issues with this I think the November election doesn't always get reported when we have issues, depending on where they happen, who's there, if there's media there. But this is very much a voter services item. But I'm telling you, I haven't lost sleep over it yet, but I think I might at some point, because I think there's going to be a massive curtailment of sites. We're going to see some areas serve, some polling locations serve many, many people. And I would like us to do as much work as we can and get in front of that if possible. If it's messaging, if it's partnering, if it's communicating, all the good ideas you guys have about reaching out and getting people to file their absentee ballots. We cannot minimize how large a concern that's going to be and how it's going to disproportionately affect people that have maybe, like you say, low propensity voters, I guess is the term that we're using now, but also people that just haven't done it before. I think we need to work on that as the Education and Advocacy Committee as well. Just in the intermediate term, that's massive. One other point that's different than this, I think another way to look at this issue in terms of sort of what work that we do intersects with racial justice, and maybe work that we've done in which we don't acknowledge the role that racial justice can play in thinking about some policy concerns. In the past few years, the Education and Advocacy Committee has worked on or looked at several things like food deserts or food justice, broadly put, affordable housing. We have a standing subcommittee, and from the events that I've attended, while that's always there, if you're talking about affordable housing, there's always going to be a racial justice component. But I don't know if sometimes that's muted or turned down, and I think that we could maybe do a better job, even within our committee, communicating to them, or just doing a better job of pushing that forward, that this is a real problem in communities of color. There's so many different areas. I mean, tax abatements and funding public schools, or one that I think about a lot, broadband access and broadband as a utility. These are areas in which maybe the league doesn't have positions or stances, but I'm looking 3 to 6 months out, and I'm seeing that we have a child care problem, maybe crisis soon. We're going to have a new environment in which teachers are going to be put at risk by going to their jobs. I think we need to look at ways if we're going to do a blended model, or if it's going to be something that's more, like where we are now. We need to maybe spend some time looking at, hey, do people that don't live in our immediate communities, that maybe live a little further out, what does internet access look out there? That is such a fundamental concern. And in every way, I think it intersects with racial justice and equity. So I guess my broader comment here is that the other way to look at this, other than educating ourselves and reading some books and talking amongst ourselves about how we can better understand racism, is to maybe flip that on its head and say, what about some policy concerns that we all care about that bring us to this work, that bring us to this committee? Can we look at those and maybe interrogate those a little differently in terms of racial justice? And then, as we're all saying, bring people in to educate us further, to open up conversations so we can better understand how some of the league's longstanding concerns really affect communities that possibly are unlike ours.
Thank you so much. I think that was great. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else? We're on a roll, guys. Let's go. Who? Anyone else have your hand?
Barbara Beardsley. She's had her hand up for a while. I don't know if she's Barbara.
I just wanted to remind you, we talked a little bit about reading, and in the e-voter newsletter, there was information about a book group, the League of Women Voters book group, that's going to be August 10th. And there was also a list of other books you can read beyond that one, created by Mary Berkey. So if you look at your e-voter newsletter, there's information about that. We're reading The Warmth of Other Suns.
Great, thanks. I actually have that on reserve. I've ordered that one, haven't got it yet. Okay, anyone else?
Sally?
Yes.
I was just going to mention one other thing. Bridget talked about the presentation on allyship, and that was very good. One thing they suggested was organizing a diversity and inclusion committee in your community and bringing together people from different groups, like have already been mentioned, the Urban League, NAACP. They mentioned African American sororities and fraternities, which are, of course, adult organizations, service and social groups. Anybody in the community with an interest in diversity and inclusion. And of course, now these would have to be Zoom meetings, and I'm not sure what the first agenda would look like. But they talked about just getting to know each other and then being able to support each other's events and missions. You know, we may not know when the NAACP has a candidates night or a fundraiser or something, but some of our membership might be very interested in going to. So just getting to know people in these other community organizations would be very helpful. And so I don't know if we need another committee, but you know, that was something they were recommending.
Are there already some committees like that that we need to get involved in so we can participate? You know, that might be a way we maybe go both ways on that. Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, Ben.
Sarah? Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Okay. Speaking of somebody who's been on a ton of committees, I am personally much less interested in joining other committees than I am in finding a way to just like bring this work in to what we do. I think it's maybe less important for us to like just build another committee and have separate meetings as opposed to how can we really think about this in our everyday work, or how can this become our work? That's kind of my opinion. But I kind of wanted to maybe pose a question to everyone again to flip this on its head a bit. Like, what are some of the possible achievements or like where do you see this work headed in 6 months, 12 months? Like, what maybe would everyone like to see come of this? Does anyone have any concrete ideas about, yeah, maybe in this amount of time or a year or 2 years, we can see this blossom or this take foot, or we can have stronger relationships with this person, or maybe we can be better educated about this thing or working on this policy that we don't know about. Does anyone have any particular sort of longer term goals that aren't just about the process, but are about the product a bit?
I'm looking to see if there's any hands up here. Anybody?
Lucinda had her hand up.
Left?
Yes.
I didn't have my hand up, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. I'm very concerned about the gerrymandering, and I don't know if this impacts this committee or not, but we can't let our elections be a heist. It has to be fair elections. And I've never been a part of this committee, but I don't know if this is something that we're working on.
Well, Ann Hinkener is on this call, and she is the guru. And I know once the census data is given out to the states and communities, we will be working on this issue a lot. Is that correct, Ann? She's nodding.
I'm sorry.
Well, that was in response to Ben's inquiry as to,
I'm trying to
6
unmute
months from now, what are we going to be doing? And is there a timeline of how we're working on this gerrymandering issue?
You're unmuted, Ann. You want to talk?
Yeah, the timeline should have been, well, the census should have been as of April 1st, and that's been pushed back by about 3 months. there's a longer period of time to gather the information because we just didn't have it on April 1st. And so generally, if 10 years ago when we did this, we got the data back from the Census Bureau in about January of 2011. So that would be January 2021, where we'd get the census data back. By the time we can be in map drawing mode, that's going to be probably about 6 months later. So it's going to be about a year from now that we're going to be asking people of Ohio, people of the world, to submit maps that they better meet the goals. Now we have new constitutional amendments for both the Ohio General Assembly and for our congressional seats. So there's different rules this year. And that should make things a lot better. It might make things more contentious. This is always a very contentious issue. But so this will be kind of an interesting redistricting year because it's the first time we're doing it under these new constitutional amendments. And so it's also something that by definition is basically a state league priority. It has to be because it's Ohio.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we will be getting a lot of information from the Ohio League down to the local leagues.
So we're probably all members of the state league.
Oh, we are.
And so we should be looking to them for this instead of so much locally.
It's certainly a partnership. The local leagues were invaluable in getting the state getting the state amendments onto the Constitution. We couldn't have done it without the local leagues. So it needs to be a joint effort. And we are all members of LWVUS, LWVO, and LWVMC.
Okay.
Nancy, I see your hand up. Thanks for your patience.
Well, talking about voter access and gerrymandering and whether or not you have the appropriate stamps to put on an envelope. Early in the conversation, we were talking about the Columbus Metropolitan Club, and they're doing this whole long series. And I think one of the most important things about justice is having access to the vote. And they are looking for programs. And Andy Campbell is the
Uh-oh.
I think
Lost you,
she's
Nancy. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna give Nancy a chance to regroup here. I would just I just wanted to respond to Ben, and I wanted to just acknowledge all of your comments and thank you. And I'm hoping as we brainstorm here, we're going to get everything on paper for our next time. You know, we're going to prioritize, and my understanding is we should come up with outcomes and things as we set our priorities. So I did want to acknowledge him, and I still looks like Nancy. Do we wait? I think we lost her.
she's gonna have to sign back in before it.
Okay, Ben. But yeah. Okay. Who else is anybody else have? Caitlin.
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Hi, I might be the youngest person on this call.
Yay!
But, so a lot of what this is kind of going to what Ben was talking about. A lot of what I've been seeing has been like these Facebook Lives, these Instagram Lives, all these panels, and they're really great. And like all the organizations that I'm in, it's like, I want you to keep doing this instead of doing it right this second. So I guess talking to his question of like what outcomes we want to see, I would want to see consistent resources put out instead of just like one big resource list, which would be great. I would like to see us sending out like, oh, here's like your monthly assignment for racial justice, or here's your 21 days and we're going to do follow-ups on this every other month or something. And I see this in like all of my organizations. It's like we're doing a lot now and that's great, but I want to do this a year from now too.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Nancy, I see you're back. We lost.
My internet cut out. What I was going to say is the Columbus Metropolitan club puts on a program every single week, all year long. And they have this whole series. And if you look online, some of them are to be determined what the topic is. And access to the vote has a history. Voter suppression is a history of racism. And there might be some opportunity for the league to be involved in one of the forums.
I think we were last spring, and it was great. I know Jackie and I went.
Okay, great.
And I think Jen Miller was one of the speakers. So I think
fantastic. They may have done it and I missed it.
Well, yeah, but that's good. We should contact them and say, hey, if you're thinking about doing this programming, we would love to
Andy
speak or give you an idea of who can speak on this topic.
Because it's hard to put together a program every single week.
Yeah.
And Andy Campbell's the contact person there, and it may be a different twist on something, but as we get closer to the election and we realize some of what was Ben and others were saying is, you know, people who love to vote in person. I wanted to go to the polls on March 17th. I put off doing the vote by mail, and I didn't get to the early voting, and it was not the same experience. And I'm afraid a lot of people, and the other thing is, you have to have the right stamps. And fortunately in March, they came pre-stamped and you didn't have to pay. But the thing about those darn envelopes is you can't put a single stamp on them because they're oversized. And there's so much about that makes it kind of a setup for people's votes not counting.
Thank you.
We're not sure yet if they're going to be postage prepaid for November or not.
Everything should be, and I hope Ohio does the right thing. They did for the primary, but it's not national, and that's kind of the thing. It's irregular, and how many people have the right stamps at home?
Right. I have mailed more letters since this COVID have in the last 10 years.
And I have to say, my husband does the mailing because I do stuff online, and it's like, how does this work? So it's oversized, so it's like, what stamps are there? I mean, and we happen to have them because he loves to do mail, but how many people have stamps on them?
Yes. So I'm looking, are there any other hands up? Anyone that we've missed? Again, my apologies. I'm just scrolling through here.
Carla has her hand up.
Yeah, Carla.
I just wanted to reiterate and kind of build on what Ben was saying. I think a great outcome would be if all of the work of the league across all the committees, you know, all of the work, if racial justice and equity was embedded, and it was a lens through which the work at least is looked at along with other lenses, but that this is one of the lenses that is looked through.
Thank you, Carla. And my understanding is that the committee needs, all committees in the league are looking at those priorities of the diversity and inclusion, the racial justice and equity, and the voter outreach and community engagement. So I think, I believe we're on target. I'm hoping, but your comment is well taken. Who else is talking here? We're going to be winding down here shortly. I haven't heard from some of you. So what we want to make sure that you do is, I think Bridget is going to put up our email addresses too. So if thoughts pop into your head, we want you to contact she or Bridget or myself, or get a hold of Elizabeth, because sometimes, you know, if you're like me, you're going to go home tonight and say, well, you know, what about this or what about that? And so we can start thinking about this further. Some of you, anybody else new to the committee, we want to hear from you. Does this sound like something you're interested in working on with us? So, okay. Or, all right, the leaguers, the ones who've been on for a while. Let me hear from you. Where are you on all this? What are you thinking? Jan, I see you're on here. Any thoughts on what you're thinking about with the way we're headed? I think she's still on. The reason I call on Jan, one of my first meetings, I sat by her and she was the one that took me under my wing. She probably doesn't even remember it, but she's one of the reasons I'm more involved. So I just wanted her to know that.
I'm having trouble unmuting her. Oh, there she
Okay.
is. You're unmuted now.
Okay, are you talking to me? Am I the only Jan? Okay. I'm thinking that we are with, oh gosh, I'm totally forgetting her name. We already, I'm thinking all these ideas are wonderful. Ben, I think you gave a very good overview of what's necessary, and like you say, let's not reinvent the wheel, but let's just keep going and continue this on forever. So I agree. I think all these ideas are wonderful. I'm waiting to hear what on the convention, the information that you all got from that. I'm looking forward to reading that, and that will help.
Okay, great.
One outcome that the board at the league has discussed for a number of years, and we always struggle with, has to do with diversity in our own league, because we traditionally have a very, we have a type of person that would be a league member, which would be a white, retired woman who's middle class. That's kind of the traditional league, but that shouldn't be the accurate portrayal. So we're always looking to have more diversity in the league. And I would say that's, we've been doing, I think, a pretty good job of partnering with a variety of different organizations that serve different communities and doing outreach, but we haven't made a whole lot of progress on diversity inside our organization. And I think that's, something that can be difficult to talk about, but, it's something that we maybe want to realize our own biases and, reason why the league is why it is, and so we can make some changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Take it to the streets.
Yeah. Okay, who else? I'm looking for hands. We're gonna start winding down here. We're almost at the end of our hour. Barbara, was I seeing you raise your hand? Okay, I'm getting a head shake. No. Okay. Anyone else? Diane, anybody want to say anything before we call it a day for tonight?
I'd like to know
Yes.
how we're partnering with other people that are doing voter registration. Is there some things that we're bringing those people into the league? I get a lot of mailings from a lot of different organizations, and
I would say, so it gets difficult. Like, if we could, we would probably drop our membership fee to like $10 or something, but unfortunately we pay per member, we pay $55 to state and national. So we either have to like really kick up our fundraising, or, so we're not like making a lot of money on the membership dues. A lot of that just kind of gets mailed out right away. And a lot of the organizations that we're partnering with right now are nonprofits, and they're serving low income individuals. So, we do talk to them about the league, but I haven't really talked up like the membership portion of it.
Okay, I think I got it. So there would have to be a fund for that to defray the cost of membership for the diversity that we want.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Well,
I think but there's a way to do it, kind of like, I think we would have to brainstorm, but there's a lot of ways that we can do it. Just traditionally, this is how the league is set up right now. But
or we could personally sponsor other people in.
oh, that's a great idea.
Can I add something real fast?
Yeah.
I want to make sure we don't all simply agree that the barrier to membership or interest in membership is the cost of entry. I think we have to work at being a more attractive place to spend your time to the most diverse swath of Columbus possible. I don't think that the $70 is what's keeping our rooms from looking differently than they do.
I think that's a good point. Thank you.
Cheryl. Cheryl, are you? So I'm trying to unmute you now. I don't know why it's there. You're unmuted now.
Okay, thank you. I'm not a member. I wanted to draw your attention to something I put in the chat.
Oh, Cheryl, it's coming in really quiet. I can't hear you. I mean, I can hear your voice, but not the words.
Okay. I wanted to bring everybody's attention to something I put in the chat. Can you hear me now?
I can't. I'm sorry.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Look in the chat. I put a link in the chat for everyone to look at. Did you hear that?
No,
She said something about chat.
Look.
Oh, yes. We saw what you sent by chat. Yes, yes. Let's bring that up.
In the chat. For
Yeah.
everyone to look at a really good free resource.
Yes. I'll help you out here, Cheryl. That it was a link to July 20th at 7 p.m. a presentation on Eventbrite with the Libram X Kendi on his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. So do you all see that on there? And we can include that link in when we send out to all of you. Is that okay, Cheryl? Could you? And if you could do that, Elizabeth, that would be great. Get the link to that for us. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, I have 7:02. And not only do I love outcomes, but I like timeliness. So I just really want to thank you all for getting on the call. Bridget and I are thrilled that you participated. We're going to get some great notes, and we look forward, we're looking forward to the people who've been on the committee for your wisdom, and then everyone, the new folks, all your ideas of how we can collaborate and work for all this. And we'd like to have the next meeting on August 12th at 6 p.m. That is a Wednesday. So hopefully we'll have some things more concrete by then, and we can discuss them. Hopefully that works for most of you. Any final words? Bridget, would you like to comment on anything?
No, just thank you all for participating, and thank you, Sally, for running such a great meeting.
Well, I appreciate all of your support. And Elizabeth doesn't get enough credit, but I've learned she is the key to the whole thing that works here. And so I look forward to getting this together and bringing your ideas. I have to tell you, I am not afraid when I have notes on who made what here to contact you and say, hey, hoping you'll get involved with this or that to help us pull some things together. But if not, I look forward to talking to you all in the future, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Bridget.
Right.